What's up, Unleash You fam, or as I like to call the Unleashed, right? We got to a different time, but the same great message is coming. I got to sit in with my homie, Chris Levy. He's like, this dude just called me his homie, right? Like, he's like my new homie, right? But I love what he's about and what he's doing and how he's doing it, so much so that I tried to get him to do everything we're doing. And I think what he's doing, how he's doing it, and what I love most about him, I don't want to rat anything out that he's going to tell you because it's an awesome story. But one of the things is during this time, right, of just craziness, right? Like that's 2020 to me has been called just craziness, right? Not all bad, not all good, just craziness. But during this time, to see that, to go towards a passion and to make it something bigger, right? Like when he told me the story, I was just like, I love this. Like, I want to get this out there because this is something that speaks to like heart. And then anybody, when you're going through something, there is that opportunity, right? Silver lining. So without me ratting out too much, what's up, Chris? How are you? Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with me and talk to the Unleash You Now community.
Hey, Michael, thanks so much for having me. This is an absolute blast. Absolute pleasure is mine. We first connected, I guess, about a month. I mean, we've been connected for a while, but actually like had the chance to sit down a month and a half ago or whatever it was. But that was you absolutely caught me at my best time in the morning. I'm definitely a morning person, so glad we had that conversation in the morning because you know what happens after 5 p.m. But no, it was seriously one of my favorite conversations that week, if not that month. And
dang right, that was awesome, man.
It's just fun when you can you feel the energy and the vibes that you're getting with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Now, so tell everybody a little bit about you, like who you are. Like, so let's say someone just walked in the door and they saw you, and you're going to introduce yourself and be remembered for this moment. Who is the man, the myth, the legend?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Chris, Chris Levy. I guess my parents call me Kristopher. That was my full name, but I like to go by Chris. I feel like it's a little bit easier to remember. And if you haven't noticed, my name is spelled with a K, which usually gives me a little bit of way to distinguish myself. But I know a lot of a lot of CHers, but I don't judge. But so a little bit about me. I mean, I had a pretty typical. I mean, I guess I see it as typical. I'm sure everyone else, has their own version of what typical background is. But grew up in Texas. Ever since I was probably 2 years old, I knew what I wanted to do in life, and that was join the military. And so once I graduated from college, I got my commission, joined the military. It had been in for several years. And I kind of hit this point where I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know to stay in, to get out, to go to grad school, to start my own business. And I actually had an injury that really shaped my perception of the world, the world I was in, and everything. And from that, I went on this kind of path of self-awareness and self-discovery. Wanting to learn as much as I could about myself and learn as much as I could about the opportunities that were available to me outside of what I was doing. And from that, I kind of just stumbled upon entrepreneurship. My dad, he was a longtime entrepreneur. I mean, he was a golf professional, but he also did a lot of things, for himself on the side. And that's probably where I get that kind of that entrepreneurial spirit from. And after being in the military for 10 years, I realized I love my job. I love what I do, but I wanted a new challenge. I wanted something that would push my limits and push everything I was doing in a way that I hadn't been challenged before. And that's what led me to start my first business.
Nice. So, dude, I love when you're like, I just knew I wanted to be in the service. So I came from a family where you were supposed to be all men, were supposed to be servicemen. Right. And I was like, yeah. And then I just got in trouble and it didn't happen. And that was good dinners, right? Being the one that didn't. Right. But it was interesting times. So you're in the military, right? Like you're doing your thing. This is always new, but you're like, how do you know, like, how do you accept that moment where you're like, I have more than one passion kind of thing. Like I have more than one purpose on this earth, right? Because I feel like all too often people get caught up in that. No, but like, this is my purpose. And if I do this, then I might take away from this, right? Like people misuse that Bruce Lee quote like a million times, and they're like, it's better to know one kick 10,000 times than 10,000 kicks one time. And I'm like, yeah, but you can do more than one kick 10,000 times. Bruce Lee knew them all. But so what do you say to someone that's like, that has that battle, and how did you navigate your way through that and be able to do some cool things that we'll get into?
No, great question. First, let's kind of define some terms and set some things aside. One, going back to my journey and what I've learned about myself, everything has an expiration date, right? Not just your life. Things you do in life have expiration date.
I like that.
And you got to kind of think about how those things are kind of laid out in your life. You know, you always want to be present. You want to be in the moment, and we can talk about that more later. But you also want to understand, you know, kind of in time and space, how these different projects, these passions kind of line up, and recognize that you're not going to be able to chase everything forever. And so, while I think it's a very important one to find your purpose, I think you can actualize and, you know, achieve that purpose in several different ways. I'm doing that right now. I mean, I've got a couple different projects I'm working on, a couple different, I mean, I say a couple, it's probably more like 20, but classic entrepreneurial struggle there. But I do love it. And because in each of those projects, it fulfills me in a different way. And that's my real passion, is chasing that fulfillment and seeing how it affects other people.
Dude, so where did that strength come from? Like to realization that, but it's like, I always say there's a different strength in knowing something or realizing and thinking it. And then there's other strength of like taking action on that thing. Right. Like I work with, and I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, and myself being one, just like you. Right. And I have like my hat in a million places, and they're like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I'm interested and passionate about some of those things. And so it makes me want to be part of those things. All right. And so then I say, I'd rather take that action and feel it and see, right? Like I'm going to jump in the water and see if I like it. If I don't like it, I can get out of the water. Right. But if I never get in the water, I don't know. And all too often I'm asked, like, how do you decide? Like, how do you get the courage to do that? And me, I'm always like, I don't say I'm courageous. Like I'm like almost stupid, right? I just do it. Right. Yeah. But it's like, what would you say when someone comes to you and goes, like, what was the deciding, that courage moment where you're like, yo, I'm going for this, even though it's completely different out of my comfort zone in a whole other area of life?
Yeah. So going back to that kind of self-discovery period I went through, the first thing I learned to do is I learned how to not give a, I'll try to keep this to not give an F, what other people thought about what I was doing. And I really believe that's my greatest asset now. But that's a process in and of itself, right? You have to go through a process to be able to lose that feeling of insecurity. And part of doing that is by becoming vulnerable and opening up and creating and writing and doing things that helps you kind of process that vulnerability and allows you to maintain that authenticity. And in the process, you're able to slowly just let go of that identity you place in other people's value of yourself. And once you're able to do that, man, I really believe you're able to do anything. And that's why it's so easy for me to start a new project and have 100% faith that I'm going to figure out how to make it successful, because I really could not care what someone else thinks. It's all about how I perceive success now, how I perceive fulfillment in my own life.
I love that, D. I don't care, right? Like I need to answer for me. And I always say this, like with my daughter, I need to be able to look her in the eyes and know I did the best, saying this is how you live. Right. And if I do that by listening and going off of other people's judgments of me, right, I'm either going to do like absolutely nothing, depending on who you talk to. I'm going to do everything, and then I might do it foolish, or I might do it well. Right. Like I always say this, my mom thinks I'm like one of the greatest humans that's walking earth. Right. She does. Like she thinks I'm even though she shouldn't. Right. Like, and I put her through more than anybody, I feel like, torture wise. But she does. She's like, no, Michael's amazing. And then like my ex probably thinks I'm the worst. Right. And I imagine I'm somewhere in the middle. But I love that. I forget the actor name. He played Bane. But and he's a great actor. Right. And he's in Peaky Blinders, and he's in great. He's in Peaky Blinders. But it's he says, he's like, the person that says I'm a great person and caring person, listen to them. They're honest. And the person that says I'm a jerk and an a-hole, listen to them too. They're honest. I treat everyone accordingly. Right? It's like you're not going to get the same version because you're not the same person to me. Right? And everybody thinks that's crazy. Just be you. I'm like, that's me. Like you just found me. Right? Like I got to give what's up to Kevin Castillo. He's in here. He said, "Yo, what's up, legends?" And I got to give a hello to Natalie. She said hello. An amazing artist, by the way. Check her out. So now you're in the middle of. So it's funny. You go on a self-discovery tour like 2018, 2019, right?
This is probably more 2017, 2018.
Okay.
So it had phases. Kind of go through phases, and that started back in 2017 when I kind of had the injury I talked about, and then had my first business failure, and then from there kind of had some emotional stuff to kind of process. And then, I came out of this kind of last phase last year, and haven't looked back since. It's been great.
So, dude, you just gave me so much ammo. I love it. You gave me so many questions. So, you spoke about something that I speak about a lot. I speak about a lot in the podcast. I speak a lot about in the business world and the people, because all too often people love talking about and celebrating victories, which we should. Celebrating wins is important because you're going to have losses along the way. So you might as well enjoy the good, right?
Yep.
But all too often people will avoid the losses, right? Like in this Instagram world, we'll show pictures of all the wins and the amazing things, and you think it's all sweet. And then when it's not, you're like, so if I'm on the outside and I'm just seeing those photos, I'm like, oh my God, like this is how life's supposed to be. And it's not like for me. So I'm a failure, right? Like I'm embarrassing. And especially when I was really ego driven, right, years ago, that used to drive me crazy. Yeah. And I fell right into it. I had the nice house, nice car, right? Like I had all the things that I thought, right, like that made me something, even though it just made me have expensive things, right? And losing assets, right? Especially after the housing market in 08. But you said something there. You said took that loss, and then I had to like regain composure, right? And I talk about my first big loss as an entrepreneur was a restaurant. It was the day I almost quit being an entrepreneur because it burnt down. I didn't have proper insurance, and so I was losing my butt on it. But it wasn't even just that. It was that you look around for the people that supported you and believed in you, and then you look around the people we had employees at the time, and you know that they're all out too. Like the people that believe in you, trust in you, backed you are out. And I said, like, that was the day I was like, yo, I'm done with this, right? Like, I can't handle all this stuff. And it took me a while. And I went and licked at my wounds. And I tried to hide from it until it called so loudly for me. I had to come back, right? And and you just spoke about that. So talk about those hard times, man. Talk about some of those defeats in the entrepreneur world where this is how I know how real you are. And this is why I'm falling in love with you, right? Is because, not in a weird way, but it's how open you are about it, right? And how just blank, like you're like, yeah, no, I suffered. I walked away from a minute just to regain, right? So talk about that part of your journey where it was just like, it was hard and some painful moments, clearly.
Yeah, no, I mean, my first business failure, and it's not so much about monetary loss for me. It's more so of the not being able to be successful at it. How I define it, and that's, and whatever the factor was, whether it was I couldn't get the product market fit right, I couldn't get in front of the right people, and for me, I look back and I realized that I wasn't in a place where I could take enough action that I needed to take to get my product or to get my business off the ground. That was really one of the first lessons I learned was, how recognizing how much action you have to take to make something successful. And then from there too, this was my first go at business. Like this was my first go. I've never done anything like marketing, never done anything like sales. And I didn't have a coach. I didn't have somebody to mentor me or to teach me or anything like that. And so I was all failing my way through all of this and just trying to figure out on my own. And which in the end paid off for me long term because I went through so much angst and struggle and trying to make this thing work that I developed some skill sets. And so I took that failure away, and I realized I need to go back into planning. I need to go back into that planning phase and reassessing not just my business, why I went out of business, but my life. And from there, I was able to kind of start to put the pieces together and understand the kind of the groundwork you got to lay to develop a business. And that's kind of what has laid everything in place for me to be where I'm at now.
Dude, it's so true, right? Like there's two ways I would say. Like one, I like that you said the skill set of business, right? Because all too often people are like, well, I don't know that, so I can't do it. I'm like, no, it's like any other skill. Like you develop it, right? And the more you develop it, the more likely you are to be successful at it, right? And the more often you can do it at a high level, again, the percentages go up, right? So you said about learning the skills. I said there's two ways, right? Like you either go through the fire, right? Like you forge, and I feel like a piece of us needs to all go through it.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other way is by learning from others, right? Either through book or educational system or however you want to do it. Mentor or coach, like you said, right? There's a lot of options. And I say they're like the great dance is a mix of both.
Right.
Right. Because I used to be young and stubborn. And I was like, I don't want to learn from nobody. I was like, no, I got this. Like, leave me alone. I got it. All right. And that led to a lot of, right. Not so great moments for me. And then it was like, all right, like maybe I should pay attention to some people and some people that went through some things and see how they navigated the space. Maybe I can navigate that space. Right? And then I fell in love with the process. Right. And I always say that moment you fall in love with the process, that's a scary moment. Right. And it's a scary moment in the fact that like this can all really happen now. Right. And I remember having not so successful businesses. And then I fell in love with the work part, right? The process part, learning the skills, developing the skills, putting into action. And then all of a sudden you saw my businesses start going like this. Right. And as I saw that chart going, I was just like, yo, hold up. Right. Like this is working. And I love winning. Right. Like, I don't know if you're competitive like me, but I love winning.
Of course.
A lot of times we'll do like so when we do any of our meetups, anything like that nature, right? We do like some kind of competitive icebreaker type thing.
Yeah.
Right. Bring the high spirits out of everybody. And every time we're doing it, they're like, Mike, do you want to partake? And I'm like, no. Right. They're like, why? I'm like, because I'll get too focused on trying to win something. Like I want to just mix and mingle, meet, say hello, make sure everybody's okay, do some of the organizing part of it, and not get too caught up in is my score high enough, or did I throw the axe right, or right. Like I can't get too caught up in that stuff. Yeah. So so that you went through the fire, you've been through some things. This is not your first rodeo. What's some of the best business advice that you think you can give someone that's in the position of you a couple of years ago?
It starts with conversations. It starts with having lots of conversations that result in relationships. And it's understanding where the other person is and being interested, or being interested in them, and not so much being interesting, right? And then it's also if you're gonna go into a certain space, if you've identified that as your passion, as your calling, then you at some point you've got to approach that subject with that person, right? You've got to guide that conversation that way. If you do marketing, then at some point you got to talk about marketing with that person and bring that up. And you want to have those conversations around that thing that you want to be known for. And it just starts with a conversation. It starts with asking about the other person, how they're doing, understanding what they have going on, and then having that conversation about what it is that you potentially will be offering here in the future. And that's just hard work. That's just networking. That's the grind. That's the hustle. That's the things that's where the foundation for your business gets laid, is in those conversations and the relationships that result from it.
Bro, I love that. And that's so true, because I even find myself now when I'm like, hey, I'll just reach out. I'll just mess someone like, hey, I know you were cool. Like, do you mind if I just give a couple suggestions about your last post to to really rev up the engagement on it to get what you want to get out of it. Unless you don't want any engagement, then I'm cool. I can leave it alone, right? Like, because I'm not trying to step on any toes. And everybody posts for whatever reason they post for. I always say, like, on my page, you're going to see some posts for me, and you're going to see some posts for others. Right?
I love that because I'm the exact same way. I post stuff for me sometimes, and that's just I want to inspire myself. And if it happens to inspire other people, great. But at the base of it, the core, I'm writing something for myself as a reminder for myself.
Then right. And also too, like, I'm human and I want you to know I am.
Yep.
Right? Like, I err, I make mistakes, I have fears, right? Like, I've really screwed up before, right? Like, I'm not perfect. And I didn't come from this perfect walk that it was just like, this is so easy. And I would say, like, I'm the dumbest of dumb because I could have had an easier life and I just did things not to have it, right? Like, I was just like, why do I do this? Right? But now I sit back and I go, even though it was more painful, I definitely learned and grew where I had to, where I don't know if I would have before if I went that way. All right. Natalie says the right people are key to helping us grow and move forward. Dang, I love that.
Absolutely.
I also love what you said about relationships, and I'm going to bring a story about you into this. So we both know some of the same people, right? And it's like a couple days or a week after our conversation, and Zach, right? Zach reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, you know my boy Chris?" And I'm like, "What?" Right? Like Chris who? Like, which Chris? Right? Like, it's like saying, you know my boy Mike. Like there's a lot of Mikes. So I might, right? And he's like, "No, you talk to him." I was like, and he said the wine guy. I'm like, "Oh, Levy," right? Like, I'm like, yeah. He's like, "I just want to let you know, I know him and he's good peeps." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome," right? Like, but what I got from that was, one, Zach's hilarious because he's still mad at me because I thought his name was ZACH.
Oh yeah. No, that gets me every time I go to write an email and I type it, I'm like, oh shit, it's supposed to be Zach.
He's like, "I'm not Zach." I'm like, what? Yeah. Right? So
next time I see him, I'm gonna call him that. I'm gonna call him Zach.
Do it, right? And so I think he still has problems with me from that. But I knew right then, I was like, this dude is my kind of people, because other people, without even being told, will vouch for that person. Like, and that speaks to your character, like, and who you are as a person. Yeah. Because there's some people I know in the space where no one will do that for them.
Yeah.
All right. And for people to be willing to do that, especially Zach, who I hold at a certain high regard, just because even though sometimes I hate what he says, he's always honest and real about it. Right. Like, sometimes I'm like, bro, just stop talking to me about it. Like, clearly we're not on the same page. Right. But he's always going to be very real and very him. Right. And that's what I respect about him. It's like, he's always going to be really him. Right. And it's refreshing to see someone that, you know what you're going to get. You're getting him.
Right.
Right. And for him to reach out and be like, "Yo, no, this is your dude. Like, you be cool with him. He's great. He's good people. Trust him." And I was just like, "Oh, all right, cool." Like, I felt it, but now I'm like, I get that reassurance, right? Like, my boy AJ always says, "Trust and verify."
Trust
and verify. Man, I trust you. Let's verify it. Right. Yep. And he did that to me twice. And after that, he was like, "All right, you're cool. You won't lie." I'm like, "All right, good." Glad he was interrogating me worse than the police. All right. And but it's awesome to see that you built that, and you built that through relationships, right, where it wasn't always what can I get out of it. It's how can I serve and help.
Yeah.
All right. So when you talk about building those relationships, do you take that approach of, let's add value, let's give here, let's how can I help, how can I give more to this situation, and then whenever it leads, when they need something of my nature, they know I'm the guy that gave that value.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how I try to work, and I'm upfront and honest with people, depending on, what project we're talking about or what we're working on. But, I want to see people succeed. I've got a buddy, he's a dietitian, and he got laid off during COVID we worked together in the Army. And so we always had the relationship, obviously, and he got out, went to school, got his degree became a registered dietitian, and then went to work for a large company in Texas. And of course, COVID happened, so companies started making cuts and everything, and he got laid off. And he hit me up, and he's like, "Chris, I just got laid off, and like I need to get my private dietitian practice off the ground now, and I need your help. And I said, hey, no problem, man. Like you got me. Like I am here to help you. And so every Sunday for like the past 3 or 4 months, ever since he got laid off, we just meet for an hour and we just go over basic stuff, basic marketing, basic email lists, and how to content, social media marketing, and all this stuff that I have just gone through a painful process of learning over the past 3 or 4 years and growing. And I want to make it as easy and as shortcutted for him as possible, because he's one of my brothers, and I'm always going to take care of my own first.
I love that when you said I have the scars to teach you from, right?
Yeah.
And that's awesome. You do that, and that's again just speaks to the kind of person you are and the heart you have, right? And the Unleash You Now community, the Unleash, a lot of our entrepreneurs, and there'll be countless times where like they're reaching out, I'm reaching out, right? Like, or they're reaching out in the community, hey, who does this? And like my favorite story about the Unleash You Now community, I tell it all the time. People are so tired of me telling it, but I tell the stories over and over again anyway. So it's when right before the last conference that was in person, when we were allowed to have those.
Yep.
And it was right before that. And the week before, the service we were using for SMS just disappeared, right? Their company was no longer existed. No one told us nothing. It was just gone one day. And it was like 48 hours to conference. And we do a lot of our conference stuff through the SMS service, right? Like either where people are going, who's out where, like, hey, just spotted at this local place a block away from the hotel if you want to go, right? Like stuff like that. And also we'll do we give a hella reduced ticket price to people at our event for the next year's event.
Right.
And we do that all through the SMS service, right? And so it's gone, and we're like, oh wow, like we're like, how are we gonna do? And we're all scrambling, we're all trying to figure out, maybe do a Facebook page thing. And I'm like, I don't want people to have to go search this. I want it to come to them, right? Because it's different. People don't, like Donald Miller says, people don't want to use calories, right? So you make people do a lot of stuff, they're not going to do it.
Yep.
So I was like, you know what? Let's just try. I'll just throw it out there. I'm like, yo, anybody know anybody in the SMS service world?
Yeah.
Within 2 hours, we had the SMS service system back up, launch, codes, everything set, like the whole system, right? Like the whole campaign we were using, right? Everything was set, all because I asked that one question to our group. And like, those are the people you never forget because they help you when you're in a jam.
Yeah.
Right. And I see you do the same thing. You fit in perfectly. All right. So tell me about, I want to know about your new obsession, your baby, right? Like, I see some of the most, listen, I'm like I don't want to ruin anything of this, but I'm like the most like not wine guy, right? I go out and like, if I'm drinking, I'm probably drinking Jack Daniels,
sure,
right? Like, like the most not wine guy. What is that?
It has its place, man. Every beer, cocktail, wine, it's all about the intention. It's all about what kind of experience you want to have.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and literally until I talked to you, I was just like, you know what? Let me try a wine. Like, let me see, like, this dude really likes wine. I'm starting to build a relationship with him. Maybe I should know something about wine, I guess. And I went and got like Hillbilly Red Wine or something that's called, right? There was like a donkey on it. I was just like, I don't know. It was like one of the first rows. I just grabbed it. But this thing was freaking delicious, right? Like this thing, I was just like, oh my God, like this is the first thing I ever, like the only other thing I ever had, it was like a blue bottle and it was Riesling. And I'm sure it was cheap. But I was just like, dude, like other than my mom, and there's other people in my family and some people in the Unleash You Now family that are very close that are hardcore wine drinkers. Yeah. And they drink wine where I take a sip and I'm just like why? Like what happened? Right? Like I think I did it wrong. And so now, one, you made me start drinking wine, and two, made me take it more serious. And like, how do you were like, this is it for me? Like, this is like, I love this kind of thing. Yeah,
no, great question. I going back to my first business failure, I knew I had to, kind of reassess. Natalie says she loves Pinot Grigio. I love Pinot Grigio as well. And we can.
I thought you would like that.
Yeah, we can talk more about Pinot Grigio. I mean, I'll go down Pinot Grigio rabbit holes, but stay on topic here. Yeah, going back to my first business, I was like, what did I mess up? Like, where did I go wrong? And I realized like I needed to find the right niche, and I needed to find the right place to be in that people just naturally knew me for, and I had a natural advantage at. And so I went through this process for 2 or 3 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what I want my niche to be, like what did I want to be known for in 5 to 10 years, as people like to say. And I started creating around wine. I started going to the local bottle shops, ordering, trying different bottles of wine, started posting content, started talking to people about wine. Back in 2017, I went on my first solo trip to Europe. I went to Italy for 2 weeks by myself, and the thing I did was I set the intention. I said, "Hey, I'm going here to learn about Italian wine," and that was it. Yeah, I went out and had some fun, and got to do some other stuff and explore the amazing culture of Italy. But the intention was wine, and from that, I was hooked. I'd learned, I learned what I wanted to know, and I learned what I didn't know about wine, which kind of created this insatiable desire to learn as much as I could about wine. And so, that fast forward a couple of years, been doing that for the past few years. And then when COVID happened, I saw an opportunity to really build a community. So I started doing these weekly virtual happy hours and wine tastings where I'd find local brands, both here on the West Coast, in California, and a couple other places. And we bring on the winery, bring on the winemaker, someone from the tasting staff, the owner, the proprietor. They get to tell their story about the wine, and then my people got to learn more about the wine and how wine's made. And so it was just a win-win-win. And from there, just kind of started to grow. And it got to the point where it's just a lot of work. And then my entrepreneurial side kind of kicked on. I was like, this is a lot of work. Like I love doing this. I love the conversations we're having and the community we're building, but I need to streamline this. I need to make it easier. And so that's how the wine club was born. I figured, if people want to ask me every week or every month, hey, what are the wines we're drinking this month? People have been asking me like, hey, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. Like, what should I be drinking with the turkey and everything? Now I can just say, hey, if you want to drink what I'm drinking right now, if you want to, get the recommended wines I'm drinking right now, then just join the club, because I'm going to ship those wines to your door, and it makes it easy for me, easy for you, and it just makes it that much easier and decreases that workload. And that's really what entrepreneurship is. It's just solving a problem.
Dude, I love what you created so much, even though I'm not, like I just said, I'm not a huge wine guy, right? You're going to change that. But when you come out here, right? Secret. When you come out here, there's a place called Nasser Vineyards out here.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll enjoy them, and then it'll be this whole thing where you come out to good old Delaware more often. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. All right. But I love how you did this in a way where no longer did so me, when it comes to business stuff, I'm like, my mind starts racing, right? So no longer did you make it convenient, right? Because you saved the hassle of figuring out the wine, going to the store, finding the wine, buying the wine, bringing it back home. You said, no, I'll just send it to you, right? So you took and you made it more convenient, right? Like you said, but you also now build a community around this, right? That you have Zooms, right? You're like, now I can be a wine lover in Wisconsin and a wine lover in Texas, and we can connect on our love for wine, right? In a community that's like-minded and passionate and care about it too, right? And then make them experience and build that relationship with wines because of how they're made, who makes them, the company that makes them, right? And it's like you took every angle of this and made it all into one thing, right? Like you can find the community, you can get the convenience, and you can become a fan of certain vineyards and ones that are making it because how they make it and who they are and their story behind it. And that's awesome how you put that all together for somebody and just say, hey, this is a one-stop shop for all of this.
Yeah, that's it. That's what really the biggest thing is. It's bringing people together, and that's what I wanted to do. And there's really another purpose too. I haven't even had a chance to talk about yet. So I wanted to, going back to start my first business, of course I had that failure, but I wanted to try to find a way to start giving back. And a smart man once told me like, hey, you got to make the business work first before you can start giving back. you got to get the numbers right. And I wanted to figure out a way to, one, align my purpose and create a purpose for the wine club, and then do it in a way where, as the club grows, how much we're giving back grows. And so that's why a portion of the proceeds and profits from every wine club membership go back to military and veteran charities that both my people and I care about. And that's really about the community. That's about, not just growing this community, but supporting other communities in this space that I think could use a little bit extra help right now.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. The for purpose type business, right? And I know we talked about that, and I said after a couple of years ago, every business I had, we created it and made it a for purpose business. So no longer do you get to follow your passion, but also it's the win-win, because what you're passionate about outside of that business also gets impacted by it.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. I know we both have feeling towards veterans and people that serve the country, and trying to help out in that area as well. So I love seeing your heart in that area and how you give back. You inspire me to give back more. I actually had something I want to run by you, so remind me off air that I want to talk about. A giving opportunity coming up here in the next 2 weeks. So you start this wine club, right? You start it first. I love this, right? So you start in the middle of like a pandemic, right? Social unrest, an election year, like everywhere is just craziness, right? Like there's like crazy fires, we have killer hornets, right? Like we have a disease no one really knows anything about, a virus that like everybody's guessing, right? Because it's so new. I mean, we really just don't know. Crazy election year where everybody just points finger, and there's so much division, right? It's like, I can't like you if you like someone other than who I like, right? And I've never seen it quite like this, but hopefully it gets better, right? Hopefully it's just my imagination, right? But so you take this moment and you go, you know what? I'm going to start a membership. I'm going to start a wine club, right? And I absolutely love that, because in the midst of craziness and havoc and just so many negative things people can bring up, I brought up most of them, right? You still say, this is the perfect time for something good. Right, like we talked about this earlier, and it's almost like I just keep going back to this. The courage you had to do this during this time. What made you go, I have to do this, and I have to do it now?
Yeah, whew. Great, tough question. I had this idea back in when we talked about finding your niche and going in on that and everything and starting to create. But I had this idea probably back in January. Once I moved to California, I started going to wineries and everything, and seeing how an amazing industry it is. And I had this idea. I was like, yeah, I could do something in wine. That makes sense. But nothing like, never in a million years, if you asked me in January, hey, Chris, you're going to start a wine club this year, would I have said, hell yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what I'm going to do this year. No, I would have said, no, you're crazy. And fast forward 6 months, I looked at what was going on. I looked at the connections I was making with people, the relationships I had with people, and I realized that it was all around wine. And when I realized, I came to that realization, that's what gave me that confidence to start a club. And that's what gave me that kind of that poise, that that idea that, hey, I can do this and I can make it successful, because one, I've got these relationships with these people. I've built this community that is asking me for direction when it comes to wine. And two, because it's something I'm absolutely fired up about. It's something I could talk about for days. And I could do a TEDx, speech on wine. And that's what it came down to, because I knew that I had to do something that, with this momentum I built up, otherwise I was going to lose it. I had to take that momentum and transfer into something new that could carry on in perpetuity. Otherwise I was going to lose it. And I didn't want COVID, to come around, close down, and then all this time and energy I put into building a community, investing in a community, and bringing people together just to dissipate. And that's really why I started. I can't hear you, Mike.
Yeah, every time we do one of these, I try to ask a couple of the same questions and go off on our own tantrum. And I love what you said about, it's just the perfect time. Like the perfect time doesn't always look perfect. It's just it.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's one of the best moments in your life? Right? Like if you had to go and they were like, you got to see a slideshow of a moment. What's the moment you're picking of your life?
Great question. It'd probably be my dad. So my dad was a golf professional, not a professional golfer. He heavily associated with the Professional Golf Association of America. He ascended very high in that sort of professional structure. And we had a night where we got to go out into New York City and kind of celebrate his career. And that moment is going to be etched in my mind just for all my life because of the amazing people we had in that room and that restaurant, and the family I had there, the friends, and the amazing wines we had, and all of these things we've been talking about kind of coming together into one moment. That will always be my favorite moment.
That's awesome. Should have figured it wasn't going to be about you. Right? All right. So now that we talked about the best, what was one of the hardest moments of your life? That moment where you're like, dang, I made it through this. I can make it through anything.
Yeah. Without a doubt, I lost a good friend in Afghanistan. And I won't go into too many details, but the hardest thing about that was having to take over his job the next night, and having to do what he had been doing to such a high standard, and then having to ask myself, am I doing it to the same standard that he's doing it? Yeah, that was definitely one of the toughest moments of my life.
Oh, damn, man. I'm sorry to hear that one. The next one we ask is a quote or something said that when anyone says best piece of advice, what would you say?
Best piece of advice. It goes back to the conversations. Be interested, not be interesting, right? Focus on the other person. I'm a really big believer in emotional intelligence and empathy, and really understand the other person's situation. And man, if you can understand, the more you understand about the other person and what they are going through, the more you're going to get out of life. I guarantee you.
I dig that. That's deep. Now I said, damn, Michael, you're asking difficult questions. I ask the same these couple questions. I ask the same ones every time. The last one, I guess the last hard question, because I'm asking difficult ones. The last difficult question. People want to find you, know what you're about, talk about this wine club, join it like I'm going to.
Yeah.
Right? How do they do that?
No, really, really simple. Best way to connect with me is on Instagram. Just at the real Chris Levy, KRISLEVY. And please shoot me a message. Shoot me a DM. I love having conversations with people. I love hearing what y'all are up to, what you've got going on, what projects you have going on. And if you got any questions about the wine club, please shoot me a message there. And if you want to check out the wine club, just head to chrislevy.co/wine club. That's KRISLEVY.co/wine club. And then for any of your listeners that are out there, and if they want to join the club, I'm offering actually a special pricing for everyone. So if they join either our 1 month membership or the 3 month membership, we're gonna give them 10% off of that membership, and would love to see them get into the club, try the wines, and hear what they think about our experience that we're kind of building over there.
I love it, man. Even in this time where you get a selfish, shameless plug, you still give. It's just in you. It's what you do. I love it. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time coming on. Thanks so much. I'm excited that you're a surprise, even though I talked about it twice so far in this thing. That you're a surprise for everyone coming out here for the retreat, the mastermind retreat coming up November 6th through 8th. Sold out, by the way, so that's going to be fun and interesting. I can't wait. I've been bragging to all my people about you, like all my wine heads. I'm like, no, listen. They're like, I've seen these before. I'm like, no, you haven't. You haven't seen this one before, right? Like, it's like, listen, some magic tricks suck, but some are good, right? This is a good one, right? And so I'm excited to see how you rock their world and what you do. I've seen your pictures, and from the people I've talked to that know you, no longer are you one of the most stand-up men that I heard about, but also what you do in business is you create unique experiences for people and make it easier and better for them to be able to connect with other people at deeper levels. And anybody doing that, I love it. So you got a fan in me, man. Any way we can support you here, definitely. I know we have a couple of things in mind that we're going to do to kind of unite and align how we're moving through and impacting people and bringing communities together. But really, thank you for taking the time out. I know you have a long ass day, and you were like running out of meetings to get here. So I appreciate you coming and being willing to work with me, especially with my internet difficulties today too.
No worries.
So you're an awesome dude. I can't wait to see how this all plays out when we're talking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and look back and joke about this time we talked.
Yeah, man, this has been a pure blast for me. Absolute pleasure. I love your setup. I love the Unleash You, the story behind it and what y'all are trying to do there. And of course, we've got some amazing mutual friends, and I am so looking forward to meeting up in person here soon.
Dang right, brother. Can't wait. Thank you guys so much. Again, Unleash You community, the Unleashed. Peace, love, and happiness. Until next time. Peace. We out.